Welcome into the DGD Podcast, brought to you by our friends over at Alumni Hall. Happy Veterans Day to everyone in the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Coast Guard, the Marines. Wouldn't be a country without you. Wouldn't be without you. Hope y'all are ready for a show. The Dawgs get absolutely bitched around. Easy, no way to put it. Absolutely manhandled 28-10 in Oxford Saturday. So we've got to sit here, we've got to stand in the paint and talk about what went wrong, right? Have these harsh conversations, right? Never fun, right? Never fun when you lose. Never. But I think we need to take away and learn from it, right? We can discuss issues that we have, right? Obviously, be in the live chat. Feel free to comment underneath what you feel. We'll talk it out. But we're going to obviously talk about that. Is there a change in the way Georgia's starting to recruit quarterbacks? We'll talk about that as well. Georgia offered a 2025 kid committed elsewhere. We're going to break that down a little bit too. That's where it leads into, is there a change coming potentially? We'll find out. But first things first, again, obviously the show is brought to you by our friends over at Alumni Hall. Hey, do yourself a favor. Get yourself geared up. Cold weather's here, folks. It's coming. Get yourself a nice jersey, hoodies, sweaters, hats, right? Even stuff around the house and the office. They've got it, and it's all licensed over at Alumni Hall in Athens. Go in stores, mention the DGD podcast, get 10% off your order, or if you can't make it in stores, go to our website, dgdpodcast.com. Scroll to the bottom. Click on Alumni Hall. It will take you to their shop. Do that, and 8% will go to the Classic City Collective, so you will be able to support them dogs. All right, do yourself a favor there. Check out Alumni Hall. It's where the dog fans shop. Thanks, Alumni Hall. With that being said, it's time to break down this Ole Miss game. And I think there's an elephant in the room, and that is this offense. This offense and what happened. And what happened? Obviously, like I said, 28-10. You didn't really move the ball. Right? You scored a touchdown on the first drive. Started off nice as a unit. Right? You sit there, you go three plays on defense, get a pick, right? And then and then you sit there and you fight and you fight and you fight and you finally get that touchdown. You go up 7-0. And then outside of that, you just got your shit pushed in for 4 quarters. The remainder of that game after that, you didn't do much at all. All right. Now I got to sit here and I'm posing the question for the night. What was the problem? Just answer that question. If you have one, feel free to drop it. I've got a lot. And I'm going to sit here and I'm going to look at Carson Beck first and foremost. I'm going to look at Carson Beck and I'm going to tell you it's not Carson's fault. Not Saturday. Not Saturday. I thought he did a good job protecting the football. I know he had that pick, which was tipped, right? We're going to talk about that a little bit too. Outside of that, though, you take numerous sacks, right? Last week against Florida, you're looking at interceptions. So, yes, you don't want to see a sack, but at the same time, I would much rather see you protect the football and just live to fight another down than give the ball to them. But that also tells me a huge problem, especially Saturday, and that was the offensive line. We got bullied for 4 quarters, and there was no way to get around it. Not at all. Walter Nolan and that defensive line, they ate their lunch. They laughed at you while you were sitting there trying to pick up any scraps. They had their way with you, and it was obvious. It was obvious. Looking at tackle play, speed rush continues to be an issue, and nothing's getting fixed about it. Not a thing. If you really had to be honest, I'm looking back at the 2022 offensive line haul. And boy, did that stink up the joint. Because we are seeing it now. The issue of not being able to recruit guys and keep them here is rearing its head right now. The last two offensive line hauls from Matt Luke is really showing itself right now. And it's not serious. And you look at Stacy Searles, recruiting wise is fine. But right now, this is a testament to the last couple from 22 and 23. And you were getting your ass whipped. And really, if you go back and look at those recruiting classes, just do yourself a favor. Do that and tell me how many are still here. Do that. Tell me what you think. Tell me what you think. Yep. Tell me what you think. Because I can tell you there's a lot of them that are not here and have been gone. So, yeah, I'm looking at offensive line, and it is a massive problem. Tate Ratledge is still hurt. Saw that. It was apparent. What do you do? We'll read some comments real fast. Star Wars, happy Veterans Day. Bill Brown, happy Veterans Day. By the way, since it is Veterans Day, if you are a veteran, feel free to call in to the show. Excuse me. Call into the show, and we'll talk it out. And maybe give us a nice little military story. I challenge any vet listening to this tonight live to do that. Let's hear a military story. I could give you mine, but I think you probably don't care about that as much. We might save it for last. We'll see. But in the meantime, definitely think the offensive line was my biggest problem. But again, it wasn't just them. It was not them. I mean, we saw Carson Beck taking tons of sacks, and there was nowhere to go. In the run game, you saw missteps on run blocking. Obviously, there was the viral clip going around of Walter Nolan and the other D line swimming over the guards. All right, we saw that. Just an overall shit day on offense. We knew this was coming, that we'd been sputtering on offense, but to Saturday, you just completely just wet the bed. There was no getting around that. And obviously it shows. So you have to find a way to get better from this. Now the question is, how do you do it? Part of it, maybe getting healthier. I don't think you have quality tackles ready to go. So that is a massive problem. Massive problem. In my opinion, I would think that Ernest Green should be playing guard. We've got an offensive line completely composed of what should be guards. And it's showing up right now. It is. I'm going to take a little bit away from the offensive line, though, and I'm going to go to the receivers as well. When Carson Beck had time, we had receivers dropping it again, right? And that's been a plaguing issue all year. I was absolutely disgusted to see the graphic that ABC had put up on live TV for the whole country to see. If you're a dog fan, you were absolutely sick about this too. At that time, they posted the graphic and it showed 27 drops and leading the FBS. You lead the country in drops. You lead them in drops. I saw that and I just got so infuriated because it's been a season-long thing. You lead the country in one of the worst wrong stats to have. But it's basically been telling of our whole offense for the most part since, I would say, Alabama, if not longer, if not the whole season. You've got Jurasic dropping it a wide open, hitting it right in the hands, dropping it. London Humphreys catches it, gets hit, drops it. Just over and over and over. And if you want to build confidence in your quarterback, those two combinations that we just discussed, it's the exact opposite of what's happening. It's killed any confidence in this offense. And it's going to trickle over into the defense because you're gassing your defense out. This isn't complimentary football, as we can tell. It's not. Defense was, by the way, the defense struggled. giving up chunk play after chunk play after chunk play. Oh, yeah, Jackson Dart goes out after the first drive for another drive. Austin Simmons comes in right down the field. Boop, 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 boop. Score. You held them to field goals for the most part. I think they scored maybe 6 points in the fourth quarter. Yeah. You had the touchdown in the first. So it's whatever. Outside of that, it's field goals. So the defense, you can be mad. You got to be by 18 points. But your offense did absolutely no favors whatsoever for your defense. You're going to gas your defense, and it showed. Reynaldo Gonzalez says Dart looked more comfortable than Beck out there. Of course. Carson Beck didn't even have 2 seconds to get the ball out. That's no way to make a living in the pocket on Saturdays. You can't ask any elite quarterback unless you're literally just doing turn and throw. So of course he was more comfortable. He actually had time to get passes out. Well, I say all this. I say all this as well. You have to give credit to Ole Miss and their coaching staff for calling up a game plan and executing it too. We can sit here and we can shit on everything that we want, but you have to give Ole Miss credit as well. Ole Miss dialed up defensive pressures all night, created absolute havoc with stunts, things like that. Right, swim move. Obviously, like I said earlier, they lived in the backfield. They made the run game irrelevant. There are no opportunities to really pass. The offense literally hit a brick wall for 4 quarters. Then on offense, execution, even in the rain did not matter. Execute, go down the field, chunk play. At least you come away with points. Obviously to the tune of 28. So yeah, you've got that right there. And then also, it's very interesting. It's very interesting that when it comes to recruiting, I want you to understand this. Isn't it ironic that where Georgia spends the most of their NIL money and focus initially is on the trenches is the same area that you got your shit beat around for 4 quarters? I mean, Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin was obvious and blunt about it too. There was talks after the Ole Miss game in Athens last year. Goes to the collective. We got to get bigger. We got to pay for these kind of guys. That's what they did, folks. That's what they did. And then you came into their house and they beat your ass for 4 quarters. That's what they did. They whipped you up front, both sides. More so the defensive side. We weren't necessarily getting as much pressure as we could have. But they're also doing short screens and running into space and grass. And I sat here and I said this on the preview as well. Except it was for Georgia. If you protect Carson, I felt the receivers could run into grass and catch chunk play after chunk play. And Ole Miss completely flipped the script and did it on Georgia for 4 quarters. If I'm not mistaken, they averaged basically a first down per reception. Something that I literally sat here on the preview show and stated about their defense. If you don't believe me, just go back to the Ole Miss preview. I guarantee you will hear me say that. Ole Miss just did their brand of football, I guess, and they played more like us than we did. They definitely didn't play their brand of football, what we had seen on tape. They came out and executed, and it was obvious. Bill Brown says, wonder if the coaches are seeing the same amount of drops in practice as they are in live games. I don't know, but the game tapes tell me everything I need to see. Saturdays matter. If you're seeing the same amount of drops in both ways, so what are we settling for? It just is what it is at that point. Because I feel like you need to find a spark, and you're not doing that. But again, it also doesn't help when your quarterback doesn't have time to let the plays develop before he's getting hit. There's that. Oh yeah, by the way, the turnover bug continues to strike. Three, not picks. Carson did throw one. We hit the under there, folks, calling it under. I was aggressive on that. He only had one. But then you look at the running backs in a wet game. Nate Frazier drops the ball twice. So 3 turnovers in the game again. Different way to get them. Different way to get to the number. But we got there. This offense is anemic. It's not clicking. There's no rhythm. And I've said it over and over again that Carson Beck is a rhythm quarterback. You need the system to work. You need to give him time. You need to let plays develop. He was seeing things when he had time. But it was few and far between when he actually had the time to make things happen. Couldn't do it nearly enough. You couldn't move the football if you wanted to, hardly. Your run game completely got shit on. So there's that. Right? But these are the hard discussions that we have to sit here and take. Right? We have to learn how to take what we saw in a negative light and how as fans can we sit here and make a positive out of this. It's going to be extremely hard to make a positive out of this after what we saw Saturday. But you have to think optimistically in ways, right? That, try to find positives out of a negative, right? Try to find a way to do that. And I understand there's going to be fans that are just doom and gloom, and I understand. And after 2 losses, especially after the way we got our ass beat this week, I get it. I respect it after that. I understand why you have that feeling. Makes sense. But I will tell you this. This has to be Georgia's toughest schedule in my lifetime. Your 2 losses come on the road to highly ranked teams. Still 2 losses. It was an embarrassment, this loss, right? But now you look at moving forward. You've got Tennessee. And we'll talk about that on our preview show. Then you've got UMass and you've got Georgia Tech. You're still in the potential hunt for a playoff spot as well. You're probably out of the SEC title game, and that's to be expected. The question is, where do things fall, right? You technically control your destiny still. You can. I think tomorrow we'll find out where the college football playoff rankings are going to be and where they put Georgia. And we'll have to assess from there how things will shake up and what needs to be done for you to benefit from it. Right? I mean, you were third. Are we predicting a massive drop-off? Ole Miss was 16 and they beat you pretty handily. Do we see that big of a drop to a flip almost? Don't know, but it's possible. But we have to wait for those college football playoffs to see where we are and what we can control. And it's a weird feeling from a Georgia fan, considering we went through some of what we've called a quote-unquote golden years, right? 2021, 2022, right? Those back-to-back seasons where we were just the dominant force in football. Not so much this year, and that's okay. We have to understand that you can't just be that wrecking ball every single game. But at the same time, I understand if you're pissed, because I trust me, I am too. Still am. It hurts. You don't like losing. You did a lot of winning. It's hard to remember what a loss truly feels like when you go through 2021 and 2022 outside of Alabama dominant. Here we are, though. So we'll have to sit here and take this and analyze it. But at the same time, now you look at it, you look at your matchups, and you end the season with 3 home games. And we haven't played home hardly any at all this year. We haven't had hardly any home games. And now you're on the stretch where you go for 3 straight. If I'm expecting Georgia to find a way, you have to trust Kirby on this until proven otherwise. Find a way to motivate these guys and get them right. Get them right, because even after this Ole Miss loss, like I said, you're technically not out of it. Crazier things have happened. Shit can happen. We'll see. But again, after the playoff rankings come out, you'll know what needs to be done for you to still make the playoffs. We have to have these realistic talks. Could you see a Georgia not being in the playoffs? I think they would bring a lot of money to the playoffs, especially if we went out and go 10-2. But you got to look at one game at a time right now, because you're not playing anything worth looking ahead. You can't look ahead. Just can't do it. Just cannot do it. Cannot do it. Can't do it. Anyways, you sit there, you take, right? I've heard people looking ahead as well. It's kind of crazy. But either way, I think you got to make it work. Got to find a way to make it work. But what does that mean? We also, and I have to keep trying to find a positive light, but it's kind of hard after what we saw Saturday. You had Jake Pope celebrating with some long-term friends, and obviously that caused quite the stir-up too throughout social media. Kirby went on to call it just stupid and just idiotic thing to do. And I get it. I understand you ain't seeing people like that right there, but if you saw Santa Claus or something like that, man, if I took a loss, I know how I would be reacting. I wouldn't be that happy. Just wouldn't. Just can't do it. Can't do it. He issued a public statement as well, but at the same time, the damage has already been done. I'll accept the apology, but it's just another bad optic for Georgia, whether it's all season or not. Now you got bad optics in the season, so make sense, right? It's just more shit to deal with. But you look at it, you move on from it. Hopefully you learn from it. And you got to get in the right mindset, because you can't be sitting here dwelling on it too much either. You got Tennessee coming into town, obviously game day in town. You've got to figure the shit out. You have to. There's a lot of work to be done. We know that. Your season's still not over, technically, right? It's just not over. Playoff hopes took another hit, but it's technically not over, right? Things can happen. Crazy shit's happened this season. We've seen it. But fuck around and lose to Tennessee, and obviously that shit's over. Your playoff talks are way gone. Then you just look forward to another bowl game and get back ready for the next season. But at the same time, I think it's interesting too. We'll transition over to some recruiting news after the game. You had Georgia offer Kamario Taylor from Mississippi, right? Current Mississippi state commit. And it led me to wonder, is there a change? Is there a change in how Georgia's looking at the quarterback position from a recruiting standpoint? It just makes me wonder, because you're looking at the current Cal commit coming into Athens this week, and now you're offering Kamario Taylor. By the way, legit 6'5", 210, I think it is. It's good size. Good size for sure. But something that's made me wonder, What's the dual threat ability? If you watch his tape, he can sling it, he can throw it, he can run it. And he's big body too. You look at it, like, can Georgia pull the flip? Maybe, if that's the route they want to go. But I'm looking at it in a sense of, I think, it's going to be interesting to see how they do go about it, right? Because you've already got Ryan Montgomery in this class, but he's on an ACL injury, right? So what happens there? Don't know. I'm not going to put anything out there. But maybe you do go for that mobile quarterback, that dual threat quarterback. And we've seen it coming on us. You've seen some teams have some good success with it. Maybe not pure mobile. Like you've got Jalen Milroe and then other style quarterbacks, dual threat quarterbacks. But you've seen Jalen Milroe cook you a little bit with running your legs. And if you go back, and if we really want to go back and look at it, the last quarterback with some legs that we had, hey, got you 2 titles, even if it was a walk-on. I want to hear about that. So maybe it's time for a change on how Georgia recruits the quarterbacks. I mean, I'm here for it. I think after what I've seen so far this year on offense, recruiting a different style of quarterback and getting some better receivers, you got to get better receivers. The drops thing has got to stop, but I don't see it stopping. I just don't. I don't know how you stop it. Everybody's in a funk. Everybody's in a funk. And it's not normal. You've seen instances where one receiver might be in a funk, right? We had this situation with Ladd. Even Ladd McConkey went through some drop issues, right? Then you look around and it was Arian last year. Now you're sitting there looking at it and everybody just can't catch a down ball. What changed, right? Bring in some new guys. Maybe you never know. Maybe you change the way that you work the quarterback position and how you recruit it. Come in there and operate the offense, but have the ability to run and change those launch angles. The launching point for where defenders go, when you change that, it's more impactful than people realize. If you're a gargoyle, in the pocket, it's easy for a D-line to predict where they need to go and the path to which to get there. But if you change the launch points every opposite time, or you have the ability to roll out and roll around, move around, that changes their whole game plan from a defensive rushing standpoint. We saw that with Stetson Bennett, if you remember. His ability to run, he can make guys miss and then take off and still have the speed to get it done. Right? We don't have that right now. You've got Carson Beck. Don't get me started with any other quarterback right now at this point. I would prefer Rashada over Gunner at this point from a pass and operation standpoint. But I think Kirby made it clear as well. We've got our quarterback. He's still riding it out with Carson Beck, and we'll just see what happens from there. We'll see what happens. But when we go back, right, you're looking ahead. We're looking ahead a little bit. And I think there's reason for it because I think people are tired of what we're seeing on offense. And if we're talking to fans, I'm sure this is what you want to hear. This is what you want to talk about and how you feel. I get it. I'm going to sit here and watch every game, right? I enjoy college football. I dread when it's not on the TV. I don't want to get carried away looking ahead too much, but we have to at some point too. There is a thing as being too in the moment. Too in the moment. Kind of have to look ahead, but you don't want to dwell on the future either. So I want to clarify that. It's okay to look ahead. Good things can come, especially when shit ain't looking the way you want it to be in the present. But yeah, it'll be very interesting to see if the Kamario Taylor news and the offer makes any leeway there. I'd honestly would love to see it, to be honest. I think it'd be awesome as hell. But that's just me. That is just me. I would love to see it. If you haven't watched his highlight tape, I highly suggest you do so. We talked about the Ole Miss game. It's time to put that to bed. I did you a favor having to rewatch the game on Sunday. And again, it's one of those games where, to me, my final thought on it was the overall vibes for that game felt a lot like 2018 LSU, in the sense that you go on the road and your whole team just completely shits the bed for that one day. Just completely shits the bed. You kind of you go there, take the ass whip, and you leave, and you just try to forget about it. Because that's what it was. Because it really wasn't. It's hard to find any positives out of that. Really. So this is more of your negative. And this is not just because of a loss. This is how we lost too. There was really not a lot of positives to talk about too much. I'm sure if you wanted to pick and prod, you could try to make an argument. But to try to keep it real with you as well, this was not one of those. This was not one of those games where you take a lot out of it. You have to try to take the negatives and try to swing a positive in regards to how do you get better from it. That's what this game was. If you look at the recruiting, like I said, I think you'll be glad to see that. I want to see some traction being made, ground being made up. Right, you started late on Kamario. I think he's flippable. Ultimately, I think you end up getting him over Jaron, the Hawaii quarterback. If you get him, I think if you get him, you're probably going to get Kamario. And I would not be necessarily mad about it based off of the tape that I've seen. And again, it kind of gives you a breath of fresh air when you're talking about something that we're not used to seeing. And especially when shit's not working. You sit there, you see a kid that can run around and make plays with running off the running outside the pocket and everything, throwing on the run. Don't really see a lot of that unless it's Carson by design. But even then, when you have the ability to run, it might help your run game, because this run game's been atrocious this year outside of ETN. And even then, statistically speaking, it's on par to be worse than 2019, which is crazy, because I thought there were some good things coming out from ETN. But when you look at 2019, I know there's still 3 games left, and there's more football to be played. I know that. I'm just telling you, as it stands right now, you could be looking at offense statistically worse than 2019. I think we all know how that feels. On a positive note, though, let's end on a positive note. I want to touch back on the Veterans Day. Right? Obviously, it means a lot to me being prior Air Force. Right? You sit there and, we sit here and take stuff for granted, man. When I deployed, I was luckily during the off season, so I didn't have to worry about it, right? But when you're serving, whether it be stateside or deployed, either way, right? And there's a lot of sacrifice that goes into it. And for me, I think one of my key takeaways from a life lesson, right, from a huge life lesson. We sit here and we talk about the military, and we're obviously a football podcast. But the things that are taught in football, strangely, if you never did football or if you never did the military, they're correlated in a way that it makes perfect sense once you're involved in both. Everybody looks at the team concept. Right? Everybody looks at the team concept. But at the same time, if you want to be successful as a team, there's so many. You could look at it as coach speak points, coach speak talking points. You're only as strong as your weakest link, right? If one person screws up, y'all screw up, and I live that. It starts off in basic training. You go the whole time, breaking you down, right? Learning, adapting, right? It's very interesting. You learn to adapt very fast under stressful situations with people you've never met in your life. You've been sheltered as a teenager, basically, and you get put in a situation where you and 40, 50 other people have to, again, under stressful conditions that basically all the time, have to learn to adapt while being broken down and building yourself up as a team. And only if you work as a team will you succeed. You can't do it individually. It just won't happen. And sure, that's talking about basic training, but when it also works when you're downrange. You got your brother's back. Now, there's people that served and didn't come back. But that's the sacrifice we make. It happens. A little bit different in football, but you sacrifice blood, sweat, tears, right? We hear this all the time in football, but it's bigger sometimes in football. So you got all the folks in the Army, the Navy, the Marines, the Air Force, Coast Guard, if you really want to call it DOD. Just joking, but nonetheless, those guys sacrifice too. And I guarantee you'd be surprised how many people come from sports backgrounds as well. You learn the teamwork concept, right? I'm going to wrap this around. I'm going to bring this back around to wrap this up. When we look at the Georgia program, you're going through a stressful situation right now. Shit's not working. Pure chaos. Pure chaos. You've been broken down. How do you fight back and work as a team to get back and build yourself up? How do you do it? How do you build yourself up as a team through a group of individuals that come in for a greater cause? You have more purpose. There's a sense of purpose. How do you do that? It's one thing to do it in the military, right? But we'll keep it on the football realm. You've been broken down if you're Georgia. You just got exposed. You're at your most vulnerable, what feels like. How do you collectively come together and build yourself up as a team? Because you can't just do it by yourself or two people. It takes every single player on that roster, and it takes every single coach to do it too. You take the training that you're taught, and you apply it. But if you're an airman or a seaman or or anything, right? You're a Marine. I can about assure you, sometimes you don't have the crutch called your instructors, and you have to do it on your own, and you have to find time, and you have to find a way. You have to find a way to make it happen together. And when you do, and you get better, and you succeed, and you accomplish the mission, it feels fucking amazing. It's amazing. It's a good feeling. That sense of accomplishment, knowing that you took 40 or 50, or in Georgia's case, 85, 100 people, however many. You get exposed and broken down to build yourself up together and come back and achieve success. That's when you feel best about yourself. And you learn a ton about you and your people around you. It's a good feeling, and it's a good life lesson. And as fans, we can see and understand this team is in a very vulnerable spot right now. How they persevere through it and the resiliency that it's going to take for them to finish the goal, accomplish the mission, if you will. Just sit back and watch. Just sit back and watch. And you're you're gonna fight or flight, or you're either gonna fire or flight. Simple one. Either you're gonna stay there and you're gonna figure it out, or you're gonna run. What do you think happens? If I know Kirby Smart, this team ain't going back down. They won't. We'll see. With that being said, have a great rest of y'all's day. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're listening to this. Again, happy Veterans Day to all those who have served. Bill Brown, comment of the night saying, fly, fight, win. Talk about that Air Force. With that being said, we'll catch you on the Tennessee preview later this week. Make sure to like, follow, subscribe on video, rate and review on Apple, Spotify. Do us a favor there. It's all free. Helps the show out a ton. Gets the word out. All right. Make it happen. Thank y'all for tuning in. We will catch y'all next time. Go Dogs.